Group Zoom, the only light on the dark side of the moon. Lockdown would be paradise if it was with you. I only leave my door to go for supplies in the zombie zone. And there's police up at
Music can have a positive and negative effect on culture. And have a positive effect, negative effect in general. But one artist has always had a positive effect on music, and on my life especially. But in terms of what he did for young people and people in general as a black person, culture, black person at that point in time, was just a positive thing. That's it. We have Ska legend, with Lovers Rock legend, to reggae legend, Dennis Bovell. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. I've waited such a long time. I mean, last time I saw you was at that event in Crystal Palace.
Yes.
Remember?
You surprised me there.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing was, it was Pete Minvala, who was there with Samande. He was like one of the tour guys for Samande and sound engineer crew. And he basically said to me, Dennis Bovell. I was like, wow. Because you know what, honestly, I'm going to tell everyone honestly, my knowledge of reggae music, it's not as wide as it ought to be. Because obviously what happens with a lot of people, your parents are in a certain type of music, and then you kind of wanted something else, right? And I went into hip hop, I went into gangster rap, you know, that kind of stuff. And that was American, it had a different kind of thing. But your music was doing very much the same anyway, because your music was kind of it was like the punk rock of its day.
Yeah, it was the rebel reggae. Because we had been stigmatized as being not the authentic thing, and not being as good as Jamaican reggae, or not, you know, on the same level as Jamaican reggae. And actually what I wanted to say to them all is that they had missed the point. The point was that, okay, our groove was based on the Jamaican reggae, but we were taking it to another level, a level that we considered or a route that we considered the Jamaican reggae had yet to travel. And to prove my belief, I set out to make a set of records that had no information as to who was performing. It was, whether you liked that record or not, it was based solely on whether you liked the way it sounded or whether you liked what it was saying. And I deliberately never put on the records, made in England, because that would have prejudiced it. And I didn't put any artist's name because that would have prejudiced it.
Sounds like a white label.
Yes. I perfected white labels and passed them off as imports.
Wow.
Right? And when I was...
That's just too deep.
Well, when I was at the top of the table, people realized, hang on a minute, those records are made in London, and exposed it. But that made it even more popular and made people, and it endeared people more to it. The fact that it was actually someone in England making these, and they thought it might have been an American, or it might have been a Jamaican, or it might have been a Jamaican in London, you know, and that tickled me really, to think that that I had broken through the cordon, and simply because I was the operator of a sound system by the name of Just Sufferer's Hi-Fi, Mighty Sufferer. And though I lived in Battersea, in southwest London, this sound system shot to fame in, you know, Ladbroke Grove, where I was, on Friday nights, I was the resident sound system in a club called the Metro, youth club, that was open from 7:30 till 11, but if you weren't there by 7:45, you were in danger of not getting in, because it was that popular. Amazing. You know. And then from playing that sound system, I realized what the frequencies would have to be reproduced at those sort of levels. So I had I had an insight into that, and I had the opportunity of being a sound engineer in a recording studio in the West End. Wow. So I was like, that was like my lab where I experimented with frequencies, and I had also access to a man by the name of John Hassel in Barnes in southwest London, who had been a part of the making of Duke Reid's Treasure Island, Duke Reid's studio in Jamaica. And so he would advise me on the frequencies that were most conducive to making deep, heavy, and clean reggae.
And so that frequency has a kind of, people talk about frequencies now, how they can be negative and they can be positive as well.
So I learned how to put the frequencies that I considered positive on my disc. Wow. And at that time, it was way before digital. So now digital just accepts any frequency at any level. You can, and some of it is quite fuzzy by analog standards, right? But when you were trained to curtail your frequency so that it comes across on vinyl, then I think you learn the crux of frequency selection. And I'm from the old school, and when digital came, I just used my analog knowledge to record on digital and have the same kind of effect,
I hear you. But the brilliance of your influence and the music and how you impacted, you could see that very much so in Babylon, the movie. You got that song Runaway. So how did you get your music into Babylon? 'Cause you were getting your music into quite a lot of things, television, film. That's really having an impact in terms of being able to propagate your stuff to young people. Very few people had the power to do that back then.
Yeah, well, I was quite fortunate. In fact, that I had done the music for ITV series, and this series was ITV's first half-hour experiment, because before that series, shows used to be on for 20 minutes. Is that
the Empire Road one? Or?
No.
Okay.
Empire Road was the BBC.
Okay.
But this show was a show called The Boy Who Won the Pools.
Okay.
And it was network on ITV, 10 weeks on TV, half hour each week, right? So, I was roped in to be a part of this series and to write. I was invited to write the music for it. The director, not the producer, the producer had told me that her young daughter had suggested that I be given a try on writing this music.
And this is what happened back then. There was little favours happening.
Yeah,
some girl
suddenly,
maybe liked your music.
I didn't know this girl was a fan of mine, but she certainly was, and she told it to her mum, who was, as I say,
this is what's happening, Mum. This is what's happening right now.
Yeah, you should get him to do it. Brilliant. And so the mum came to see me, and I only found out after I'd done it, and the series had been on TV and all that, and we were having a party, and I said, the woman said, "Do you know how it is that you actually got that job?" And I'm going, "Well, tell me." She said, "Well, when I interviewed you and asked you how long it would take you to write these songs, you said you would do it in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
And everyone else that I interviewed said it would take about 3 months.
Wow.
So I thought, I'll let you ever go for 2 weeks. Yeah, if you fail, we'll get someone else, because I expect it to take 3 months. And when I had delivered within 2 weeks all the songs they wanted, she could not believe it.
No.
So I was given the choice to write these songs for this, The Boy Who Won the Pools. Amazing. And as I said, it was ITV's first experiment with half-hour shows before the interval, before the adverts. Because before that, it was 20 minutes, then the adverts. This was their first half-hour show, and they had taken off a very popular show on Sunday evenings, a show called Black Beauty. They took Black Beauty
I know,
off.
I remember Black
and
Beauty
put
as a kid.
my show, the show that I was involved with.
Wow.
So it was like, what, we're replacing Black Beauty?
You can see why I'm so excited, everybody. Dennis Bovell. Seriously, his impact back in the day of my dad's generation, incredible. So you know artists like Winston Bennett, my mum as well.
Of course.
And,
Well,
my dad.
the thing is, I have to say is that your dad was one of the people who most encouraged me in my teenage years to stick at being a musician, because he could see that, well, he thought that I would, eventually make it.
Yeah.
And he took me under his wing, and every time he would come back from his duty as a soldier, we would meet at your grandparents' house in Sugden Road, and we would write songs together or rehearse together. Your dad had a group called Black Volts.
Yeah, Black Volts, I remember. Yeah.
And in fact, in 1 year, Black Volts and my band, which was not yet Matumbi, it was called Stonehenge, we staged our own group clash in a famous place, in a church hall, in a street off Lavender Hill called Poutney Road. And this,
I know Poutney Road, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
well, this place, this place was the place where all the big four sound systems in the UK would meet and clash. I mean, there was Sir Coxsone, there was Duke Reid, Count Shelley, and Neville the Enchanter. That would be their clashing ground. So your dad and his friends and me and my friends decided, let's have a group clash, because we're all from Battersea, and let's have to see who is the best reggae band in Battersea then, or and we put this show on there, and it was your dad's group and my group, and we were playing, and I remember the keyboard player of your dad's band was a fellow called Michael, and he's the elder brother of the boxer Frank Bruno.
Yeah, my dad talks about, my dad knows, talks all about Frank Bruno and the family.
Listen, your dad was instrumental in taking me to the studio to practice my one-man bandship, right? He would take me into the studio and I would play drums, then the bass, then the guitar, then the keyboard, and your dad would sing. In fact, one song that sticks in my mind from that time is a song he wrote called Fight for What You Want. And the melody went, you gotta fight for what you want, you gotta be strong to keep it, and I thought that was a positive lyric. You gotta fight for what you want and you gotta be strong to keep it, And that was kind of our motto. And in fact, the multi-track tape that your dad had bought to record that song on, he lent it to me. I borrowed space off him to record the Matumbi hit Man in Me. And I've still got that tape. Eric, I've still got the tape. Don't worry, it's not
know
lost.
where it is. No, he'll probably give it back to me.
He knows it. He probably forgotten that he gave me that tape to have space on. But I was allowed to keep it because I was the engineer in the studio, and I would be the one who knew where to find anything. Most of your dad's tapes I had charge of,
Well, do you know what? All I can say is, based on obviously my dad is very good at that. He's got that. I've been told he's a bit of a talent spotter. Yeah. He wanted to get us into music when we were young and everything else. So, just have that ability, what you did, to be able to be a producer, musician. That literally, you were like gold dust at that point.
He was my starting block.
But you were like a magician back then.
Well, because my father had said to me, if you mess about being a musician, you're probably never going to eat a decent meal in a decent restaurant. He said, most of the musicians I know are broke and washed up, right, claiming not to have been paid for stuff, right? You want that for yourself? And my response was, you can't tell that to Stevie Wonder. You can't tell that to Ray Charles. You can't tell that to Louis Armstrong, right? You can't tell that to Earth, Wind and Fire, right? You know.
I love that. It's great. You know, it's great support for musicians out there who are trying to come through now.
I stuck at it, and I also availed myself of the knowledge of how to play drums, how to play bass, how to play guitar, how to play keyboards, so I could fill in. And if someone wanted a drummer, I could jump in there. If someone wanted a bass guitarist or a lead guitarist or a keyboard player, I knew how to do all that.
It sounds like you had the kind of mentality of Prince, and that's what makes great producers. You've got to be able to hear every single sound.
That's right. And
that's what I say something. That song, I listened to your song, Silly Games. That's a masterclass in songwriting.
Thank you.
No, literally, absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe, I heard the acoustic version, and I couldn't believe you sung that song.
Well, I purposely.
Yeah, but I'm seriously, I'm still, literally, the hairs on the back of my neck when I listened to that song. I was like, he wrote, because I remember, who was the singer that was famous for?
Janet Kay.
Janet Kay.
I taught her the song and invited her to be the vocalist for that. And I think she's reasonably thankful.
No, that tune is every single dance you go to.
Yeah.
They play that song. It's almost like it's an
anthem.
If you don't play that song, it's not a proper dance.
Yeah, it's an anthem.
Yeah.
In fact, people are forever calling me up and sending me clips of people doing it in karaoke. Just recently, Lee John from Imagination, he sent me a clip of someone singing it karaoke, you know. And my other friend, Arturo Tapin from Barbados, a fantastic saxophonist, sent me a clip of some girls singing it in a hotel bar, karaoke. I mean, now that song is phenomenal. I don't wish I could write another one because that's a one-off. You know, I've written other songs that other artists.
That's like Lovers Rock. That's like proper Lovers Rock.
It has by now the test of time.
Yeah, but how did you go from being a reggae artist, ska, you know, blues and you know, blue beat and things like that? How did you go from how could you just bounce from such different genres all the time so easily?
Well, at a time when we were looking for our own identity in the reggae field, lots of English, British musicians were trying their hand at Lovers Rock style. And I had the good fortune of being involved with what has become known as the first British Lovers Rock successful recording, which is a song called Caught You in a Lie, with a singer by the name of Louisa Mark. Lloydie Coxon,
Lloyd Coxon, yeah. So Lloyd Coxon.
Lloydie Coxon, yes. Yeah,
I think that's I think that's my cousin. You know.
It's probably
So
he
Lloyd,
is probably because I think he is related to your dad.
Yeah.
And he, I mean,
Lloyd's my cousin. I know that much. But I think so. Look, Lloyd Coxon must be his dad. That's his dad.
No. That's a different.
Okay.
Different Lloyds, right? But Lloydie Coxon, who was the sound system I talked about. That you know, I mean, for a long time it was the #1 sound system in Europe, let alone the UK. You know, the most forward. He had records by everyone. He had dub plates by everyone. You know, he had extensive collection. You know, and he had refused to do a clash with my sound, Sufferer.
Okay.
To my face.
What's a clash like? Can you give us a description of what is actually
a sound clash? All right, two sound systems meet in a place to display the extent of their catalogue, the extent of their record box, and try and outplay each other with exclusive tunes. You know, and I had quite a number of exclusive tunes. So did he.
Oh, so because in other words, they can't get hold of those records.
That's right. Anywhere. The exclusive were exclusive to me, you know, and exclusive to Coxon were the same, and to Duke Reid was the same, and to Count Shelley was the same. Where I had pipped them to the post a little bit, was what got me the name Blackbeard. Because when reggae started releasing the version side, as well as the vocal side, I took it upon myself to get a record that was at #1 in the charts, a song called Young, Gifted and Black by Bob Andy and Marsha Griffiths. I took it upon myself and took the liberty of helping myself to a sample of that record, where I took a few bars and made what's now known as a loop. But in them days, in 1968, right, I was making that loop because I'd been reading Sir George Martin's book about how he had made loops with the Beatles and spun them back in. And I thought, I can do that, you know, because at my school, fortunately, there was a recording studio, right? And I was kind of the chief engineer, you know, because when the studio was being built, there were lots of black labor building it. And it was under the pretext that these boys were learning to be carpenters, to be masons, to be, you know, it was technical drawing. And that was fine. But when it was a studio and was being operated, there were none of us visible. So I took it upon myself to go up to the studio and proclaim myself chief engineer. Got me reported to the headmaster, who said, "What makes you think you can pull a coup like that?" And I went, "Sir, when this studio was being built, there were plenty of us as labor. Now it's being operated. There are none of us in learning how it functions, you know, and I am the representative of all of us that helped build it, right? And they have nominated me to be the black person in this studio who's going to get that knowledge."
Is that where you came out of this, or were you actually kind of like nominated?
No, I actually, I wasn't nominated. I nominated myself.
You're blagging it. You're blagging it.
And he laughed and says, "What makes you think you can get away with that?" So I told him. And then he said, "You know what? I think I'll let you stay.
Wow.
But if you put 1 foot wrong, you'll be for the high jump." And I went, "No problem." And the studio was actually built for the English department to make sound effects for our drama group, of which I was a member of the drama group. You know, I'd managed to secure the lead part of a couple of school plays. And I was heavily thought I was going to be in acting, you know, until I went to the old Vic for an interview one time, and I was the only black kid there. And I thought, there's no parts for me. There's no point in me being here. I'll be forever on the bench, you know. I'll never play for this team. So I turned the studio around into a recording studio and took my friends in there, and I made friends with the schoolkeeper, so that would be the last room he would lock up on an evening once he was locking up the whole building, you know. And then you go, "Right, come on, you lot got to go now." It'd probably be 5 o'clock, but I'd by then have got, you know, what I wanted to do with my friends. And I was also in charge of a radio program that was broadcast in the school on Tuesday mornings. And the recording studio, I mean, had this radio was broadcast from there. And the title of the radio station was Radio RVP. And RVP because the building that we were in had been formerly the Royal Victoria Patriotic Hospital for people who had been wounded in World War II. But then in the 60s, it became the school building. And the recording studio was up in the pinnacle of that building. And so we would broadcast every Tuesday morning from 9:30.
It sounded like you started off the first pirate radio stations.
Well, it wasn't broadcast on the FM or anything. It was piped radio because we used the school's PA system because that's what the school would inform the end of the period. The end of the period, and you would hear beep, all over the school, that's it, the period's over. Next period, you know, so if you're doing English at this period and the next period is French or geography or history or whatever, you then go to the history master, you know, at the end of the period.
But you were learning, the thing is, you were learning these incredible skills. You weren't even aware how they were going to impact you and be effective in the future.
That's right.
So when you, so to cut you there, because obviously, thank you for sharing this. I really appreciate everything you're sharing. I really appreciate it. But when you think about now, like you hear about young people today who don't recognise how because you're talking about like opportunities that weren't available to you. You have to create those opportunities for yourself.
Yeah.
But we kind of see, like I've studied criminology and things like that. So and as I was a young person that was involved in gangs, so for me, I know, similar to what you're saying, I knew that was going on, but maybe I might have said, you know what, I'm not going to fight for it. Whereas you are fighting for that change.
Yeah.
And you see young people today, like how I used to be at a point in time, wasting the opportunities, thinking that there aren't no opportunities for them. Do you know what I mean? Believing that the society owes them a living, and not recognising, more importantly, that you can change your life very easily if you go and you fight for it.
Yeah, if you recognise what it is you want. I have to thank my old housemaster at school, whose motto was, by all means, destroy the world, but put something better in its place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, and that's
exactly. If you can't repeat, so replace it with something better, don't bother changing it at all.
Yeah, don't even bother.
And that's
try.
what we're seeing in society today, that people are trying to change everything, but they're not replacing it with something better.
Right, they're trying to change it for the worse.
Get rid of it, destroy it, and you know, I mean, what was punk about? Anti-establishment. You know, they were trying to create something else. Okay, we think there's something better. Do you know what I mean? Maybe Nanny Key, who knows? They probably didn't know what they were really going for.
Wow.
But there was but during that period, everyone seemed happy. You know, we're all enjoying it together. You know.
Yeah. Well, in that period, I myself stepped out of the reggae lane and went in to do some punk productions. The first production I did in that vein was a group called the Pop Group, and the album was called Why. And then the second venture in that idiom was a group called the Slits.
Okay,
and,
yeah, they have
and these
Slits.
were
Wow.
the first.
You worked for the Slits.
I produced their first album. It was called Cut. Chris Blackwell had called me in and said, "I've just signed this group. Can you tell me if you're interested in the production?" And I was, oddly enough, and because I had something to prove. I had to prove that that we were capable of doing anything that we put our mind to. And so I went in there and I produced the album Cut, which was their debut album. And I was very, very happy to see recently in a magazine where they had listed the 100 most influential punk albums, and that album was sat at number 2.
Wow, there you
so
go.
I
There
thought,
you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was worth it. I mean, when we did that album, right, it was astonishing because no one thought that a punk band could sound like that, also to display such ideals.
Incredible.
Especially 3 young girls.
Amazing. Absolutely. And do you know what? I just want to think about something. They talk about bands, and I don't want to take away from punk because it's a very interesting conversation to be having. But you named your band Matumbi, and I'm just interested to think, what was the at the time? Because you referenced Marcus Garvey in one of the songs, of some of the songs of the album. Why was the African influence? Where was the African influence coming from that was affecting you at that point in time?
We had become fans of Osibisa. And my dad had quite an extensive collection of African music. Fela Kuti, Sunny Ade. I mean, he had music from Ghana, right? Merengue, and at a time when it was pronounced that black is beautiful, and everybody was back to Africa anyway, I thought, we have to have an African name. We have to find our Africanity. And as fate would have it, I was studying O-level English, and on the curricula, there was a book called Mr. Johnson. Now, this book, Mr. Johnson, was a tale of the British occupation of Nigeria. And Mr. Johnson was a Nigerian clerk in the British Pay Corps, the Army Pay Corps, right? And his boss was a man called Sergeant Gollop. I mean, this book, Mr. Johnson, was written by the novelist Joyce Carey. It has since become a film, and but it was part of the curriculum for my O-level English studies in 1969 or thereabouts. And in the book, Sergeant Gollop was depicted as having the most beautiful black woman in all Africa as his partner. And he was envious because of it, you know, and he was an Englishman in Nigeria with a black partner, and her name was Matumbi.
Okay.
So the word itself, for me, is signaled beauty. And later on, when I found out that the word Matumbi was the Yoruban translation of reborn, you know, born again, reborn, right, or reincarnated. So there we were, me having had a pop band, a blues band, a rock band, and now I'm going into a reggae band.
Hearing this stuff, guys?
Where I'm proclaiming my Africanity. And we thought, well, the only way we're going to do that is by having a reggae-only band. And that was thought of at the time as being professional suicide, because most bands played a bit of pop, bit of rock, bit of R&B, bit of this, bit of that.
Well, people you don't see that now. So, you know,
No.
I'm sorry to say it, but that's what I care so much about, is young people playing live instruments, trying different types of music. They're kind of stuck to one kind of style of music. That's why I wanted to talk about Africa, because Afro beats is like a positive energy now that's coming back into the music. And I wanted to know how that positive African element got into your music.
Yeah, well, you see, that was because at school at that time, I was learning for the first time in my English education about Africa, albeit from a kind of negative occupation of the British Army in Africa, but it was about Africa, right? And that word Matumbi was in that book, and I thought, I'm having that, and that's going to be the name of my next band. And it was. So when I decided to form Matumbi, one of your dad's friends, a man called Houghton Jones, who, in my estimation at that time, was the best reggae drummer I knew. And I thought, if we're going to do a reggae band, we've got to have someone who knows how to play reggae, someone preferably from Jamaica. And Houghton was from Jamaica. He's a lot older than me. And he was like your dad's generation, but he was good. And he played for another one of your dad's friends, a man called Earl Matthews. Now, Earl Matthews was a great guitar player, but his band, right, was a soul band. They favored Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Benny King, all that style of music, right? But there was this drummer in the band who could play reggae. And I found myself a couple of times deputizing for the keyboard player in that band when they had a night, a weekly or a monthly gig in a place called the Greyhound in Fulham. So one Sunday night a month or 2 Sunday nights a month, I'd go there, and because I was able to play the keyboard and they needed a keyboard player, I would go and dep as a keyboard player and then get to speak to the drummer and go, hey, I'm forming a reggae band, you know, what do you reckon? And so once when I played drums for a rock band at school, I borrowed his drum kit, because I didn't have a drum kit. Borrowed his drum kit, and when it was time to give it back, I made a silly comment like, you're not getting your drums back unless you come to my rehearsal with my reggae band, Matumbi. This is me, a young kid talking to an older man. I was 15, he was 25. You know what I'm saying? And he laughed. I said, if you don't, you're not going to get your drums back because I'm going to keep them, right? And he went, and then he went, yeah, let me come down. And then he came. I introduced him to the rest of my friends who had been Bevan Fagan, Errol Pottinger, who we went to school together, and the three of us had formed a harmony alliance because as well as being a reggae band, we had to have singers who could sing harmony, you know, and the three of us actually were very good at that. And coming from,
I could hear that your harmony.
coming from a religious background, I mean, my grandfather was taught the church choir, and Bevan's father was the preacher of a church in Mallinson Road in Battersea, and you know, Errol was a phenomenal singer because he was the singer of Stonehenge, right? And then after Stonehenge kind of broke, and we decided to form Matumbi. Also, I had at my disposal a very talented keyboard player. Now, this is a white kid with ginger hair who has been my mate since we were 14 years old at school, and he's still my friend now.
Sounds like my childhood.
His name's Nick Straker.
Nick Straker, okay.
Nick Straker, and
no relative of Peter Straker.
no, but Nick Straker, he did that song, "A Little Bit of Jazz Tonight, Make You Feel Alright." Little bit of jazz. Also, "A Walk in the Park." I walk in the park, I sit in the dark, and which was a huge
that sounds
hit.
great. Yes, I can hear it.
It was a huge hit in Germany. It was 27 weeks in the top 10 in Germany. And he was the original keyboard player of Matumbi. And so, because we had him as a keyboard player, we kind of excelled because a lot of keyboard players that we knew were three-fingered players. He was a classically he could play, you know, anything. And he was a novelty as well as the only white kid in a black reggae band.
Yeah, and that's always
in the
cool.
60s.
That's always cool, and I love that because you had that multicultural band and everything else. So when I think about, because obviously for me growing up, what we started to see was rock music was for white people. Gangster, rap, whatever, was for black people. There was all this kind of, reggae music was black people. Massive division. So when you hear, because I spoke to Winston Bennett and he was just saying he played rock music, he played wherever. He mixed wherever he wanted up to it, and that was what. Bob Dylan, he supported Bob Dylan at one of the biggest concerts. So, when you see the difference now that kids are like going, they won't play rock music because it's for white people, what's your thoughts on that?
I think they're limiting themselves. Because all music is for all people. If you're interested, do it. I mean, in America, there are lots of black people, white people that are playing music that you wouldn't normally associate.
One of the bands, Living Colour, for example.
Absolutely. I was just going to come to Living Colour, right? And they're a phenomenal band. In fact, once when I arrived in America, with Linton Kwesi Johnson, our guitarist, the head of one of his guitars was snapped off. And the guitar player of Living Colour took him to his house and said, you can borrow any one of these, there's like 50 guitars on the wall. And we did it, a concert in New York that night using one of his guitars, It was gracious of him to kind of invite us and do that. So
you mentioned Linton Kwesi Johnson. I was going to come to him. I know you had a good friendship with Linton Kwesi Johnson.
I still have.
Yeah, exactly. Did any of his poems or any of that period, anything he talked about, did any of that ever influence your songs or music?
Well, being a black British person residing in London, in the capital.
And please tell us what it was like growing up as a young person.
Well, yeah, I mean, there were lots of taboos. In fact, I remember in my first group, when I was 13, one of the members had this girlfriend that whenever they went into her house, I was not allowed in. because the father was racial, and nobody knew what that man would do, turning up and seeing me in his house, right? And so I understood that and never went in to that house, you know. And because that girl was my friend's girlfriend, whenever they were going, oh, we're going to go and hang out in her house, right? I was like, I'm going home. I mean, I live somewhere.
I'm sorry to cut you there, and I apologise. Please forgive me, everyone. This is Dennis Bovell, and I have no right to interrupt him like that, other than the fact that he's a good friend of my dad, so kind of a bit of family connection there. But I had a similar thing. I've had a similar thing with different people outside of the white community. I mean, I've had, you know, I remember growing up, I couldn't go into an Asian person's house.
Well, there was that as well.
Exactly. So people don't talk about that. It was like the same. So I had the same kind of mistreatment, or that, you know, feel that you can't be there. And I probably had more kind of togetherness from white people. I remember I had a friend they had a garage next to where we lived, and next to his house, and I used to go to the garage from where he lived, and I used to work, you know, doing body work on cars. And when I was about 9 years old. Do you know what I mean? And that was a black guy who used to teach me about cars. So that's why it's so important for me to kind of, your knowledge is so important for young people. And that's why these interviews and these conversations are so important, because I want them to understand what you've experienced and what we've experienced can be useful for them.
Yeah, and you can turn it around. You know, I'm still friends with my friend who had that girlfriend that I couldn't go in her house. But God knows where she is, or where the rest of her family is. I mean, they weren't important to me. And I had no desire to be somewhere where I wasn't wanted.
Of course, absolutely. It's nothing worse. It makes you feel like an animal, doesn't it? It makes you feel like
the thing was, I thought, you know, I can weather exclusion. Right? Especially, I don't want to go to somewhere where I'm not wanted, because I sure as hell not going to have anybody who I don't want in my space. So what I did to combat that was I would have alternative sessions where boys would come to my house of all kinds. I had Chinese boys, Indian boys, white boys, black boys, but no girls. And I had been given permission by my father to use the basement of our house as a facility for rehearsal, recording, and he was quite smart at that, because it meant that I was always at home, and he would know where I am. And this was pre-mobile phones, so my dad would call the house, and I'd be in trouble if I didn't answer that phone, because that means I was out somewhere, right? But indoors, in the basement, I have all my friends who were envious of the fact that I was allowed to have so many kids in the house, and mum and dad were out, you know, and I would be the one in charge. And sometimes we'd raid the fridge, eat all the fish fingers and the sausages and the eggs and all that. And my parents didn't mind. We'd raid the fruit bowl, eat all the grapes, the oranges, the apples. And my parents didn't mind. They would just bring more, because they knew that I was at home, right? And I was in charge of that gang, you know. And also, if ever my dad spotted someone who he thought was disrespectful or something, he would pull me aside and say, don't invite him anymore. He's rude, disrespectful.
And that's so important, of having the family around you, that connection to family. And if you can have that, where you can, you know, you can have people, you know, just kind of safeguarding you.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids today, and I keep bringing it back to that because it is important, they're out in the street, the parents can't keep an eye on them.
Yeah.
Back in those days, there was a culture, there was a community.
Yeah.
But you've got generation after generation now of people who've been brought up very differently from your generation.
Yeah.
The Caribbeans.
Are strange to manners and stuff, you know, disrespectful to elders and stuff. I mean, in my day, you wouldn't dream of disrespecting an older person, because that person may know your dad or your mum, and then go and say, hey, I saw your son in the street behaving, you know, unworthy of being your son, and then you'd be in big trouble. you know, for displaying that kind of behavior. But I mean, I was allowed to have them all in my house and rehearse up until, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night. The neighbors never complained. In fact, the first time that I was disallowed from rehearsing was when one of the tenants had a baby. And sadly, I didn't think much of that baby because we had to not make any noise and wake up that baby. And I thought, oh my God. And they're tenants. Dad, give them notice. You know what I mean? But then I had to respect the fact that my dad was, you know, making whatever he was making from renting out that flat. And then, you know, I couldn't rock the boat, as it were. So, but then I quickly graduated to a place called the WCCR, which is the Wandsworth Council for Community Relations. And it was a few yards away from the police station in Lavender Hill. And we were allowed to rehearse there on Thursday nights. And on Friday nights, we'd have the sound system in to be a bit of a thing. And that was where the group kind of took off, you know, rehearsing and then getting gigs as a reggae band and then being spotted by Pat Kelly, who invited reggae legend.
Yeah, John Holt. My dad wrote some
Pat
John
Kelly,
Holt.
all that. Yeah,
brilliant.
And he actually invited us to be his backing band.
Wow.
Which we accepted, and after that we backed Pat Kelly, we backed Johnny Clark, Ken Booth, Derek Morgan, and more famously, the rapper I. Roy. Now, speaking of all these kind of famous people that were coming from Jamaica and somehow gravitating to Battersea, Dennis Brown, you know, people like that. And one time, sat outside in his van with his friends was your dad, and Desmond Decker. And they had an idea that I would be featured in Desmond Decker's set as a young 14-year-old guitar player. And you know, the kind of youth phenomenon, right? And they had that idea.
My dad was obsessed with that.
I know. And so I would come around and speak to my dad. They came round, and when they were outside, I rushed into the house. Dad, Desmond Decker's outside. You know, he wants to speak to you. My dad was like, yeah, what about? I was like, well, he's got an idea that he wants me to come and play guitar in his band. And my dad went, he's a big man, right? You're a boy. Your duty is to go to school. He's a big man, he's out there. You're not going in that band. What are you going to do about education? And my dad refused to go outside to even meet Desmond Decker. And he was a Desmond Decker fan, right?
Wow. I mean, that's how much he loves you, though.
Yeah, which resulted in every time I saw Desmond Decker since that, up until his death, he would say to me, how's your dad? You know, yeah.
Oh, amazing. And do you know what, so the importance, and everyone here, my son right now is doing, is on one of the cameras, the importance of having young people involved in this stuff and being part of the story, the legend is incredible. Like, you're talking about that lesson.
Yeah.
Just to show, education's so
key.
important, and it comes from, so coming from you, my son probably will listen to it more coming from you than he will from me.
Well, this is true, because my two eldest sons, when they wanted to record stuff, I paid studio time with other engineers for them. I didn't want to influence them. I didn't want them to shame me by turning down one of my ideas. So I let them do it by themselves. My youngest son said to me one day, Dad, what instrument don't you play? Or that you wished you could play? I found myself saying, well, the steel pan is a very interesting instrument. And coming from Eastern Caribbean, I wish I'd paid a bit more attention to the steel pan because it's the latest instrument to be invented in the 20th century, and it's coming from Trinidad, you know. But it's a peculiar tuning that I haven't learned, and so, you know, it's not the same as keyboard or guitar. The notes are in different places, you know. And he turned to me and said, "I'm going to learn that."
There you go.
Because he didn't want my advice,
that's right.
He wanted
It's really so ironic, isn't it?
from someone else, and that I could not have the privilege of saying, "No, that's wrong," because he knows that if he did something wrong, I'd be straight on him to correct him. If it's guitar.
Same.
You know,
my kids are saying they've chosen acting, they've chosen football.
Yeah.
Because I know a little about football, but not enough. And acting, I taught them a lot about acting, but they've gone way over me on that. So they want to be exactly. That's it. It's like they want to find their own path. And it's incredible.
Well, when I look back on the mirror image of myself, my dad would have rather me been an accountant or a bank manager.
Yeah.
You know, or at one time, he even arranged for me to do an interview at British Telecom. I failed it deliberately, miserable, and still passed. Because it was his friend that was marking me. And his friend told him, "If you ask me, your son's not at all interested in this." Right? So he got me the job, and then I didn't turn up for the first day. I didn't turn up. And he was very annoyed, and he's like, "Right, that's it. I'm done with you. I've got you. You didn't take it. You know, you take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So you're on your own."
Now here comes another love song. We're on the highway, heading in the love direction. Make love and not war. Oh, so you stick with love and you can't go wrong. Come in, Bobby, and tell them. I wanna love you like those star-crossed lovers, like my father loved my mother, like my grandmama taught me. Wanna love you like the fish, love that coral, like the bees, love that honey, like the monkey, love banana. I wanna love you like the day loves aurora, like the night loves December, and like the stars love the twinkle, yeah. Wanna love you like the patient loves the doctor, like the student loves the teacher, like the church loves the preacher. Listen, listen, it's a love exhibition. Love, love is the mission. Love, love is the mission. Listen, listen, it's a love exhibition. Love, love is the mission. Real love is the mission. I wanna love you like my drums and my guitar microphone and the mixer synthesizer. Love my fingers. Wanna love you like the bread loves the butter, Kool-Aid, and the sugar like the Brits love a cup. I wanna love you like the rain loves to fall, like the wind loves to blow, like the winter loves the snow. Wanna love you like freedom loves a fighter, like the joy for your laughter, like hope loves a dreamer. Listen, listen, it's a love exhibition. Love, love is the mission. Love, love is the mission. Listen, 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 listen. Real love is the mission. Love, love is the mission. Real love is the mission.
Brilliant. Well, on that, we're going to change subjects a bit now, because obviously we talked about your experiences, your journey, your inspirations, but we talk about. But then I want to get to the meteorite rise, where because we ain't got much questions left to go. We're getting on to the end of the interview. To be fair, there's the question about your MBE. Now, based on historical, there's all this controversy about this stuff now. People rejecting MBEs. What was it like for you to receive an MBE?
Well, when I first received notification that I was to be put forward for an MBE, I thought it was a hoax. So, in the spirit of comedy, I accepted.
Oh,
Right? Because a few months before that, a friend of mine, Neil Fraser, the mad professor, had said to me, "You're going to get an MBE."
wow.
And I went, "Yeah, like hell." And he said, "Yeah, you are." And I said, "Who told you that?" And he went, "Her Majesty told me." So I went, "You know her, do you? Get out of here." Right? So when I received this notification, this invitation, I thought, that's Neil up to his tricks again. I'm going to accept it and see what he says. And I fill in all the things and go, yeah, I accept it. And then a couple of months later, I'd forgotten about it. Linton Kwesi Johnson calls me up and he goes, "Congratulations." I go, "What for?" He goes, "On your MBE." I go, "What do you mean? How did you know about that?" He went, "It was published in the Royal Gazette." That you've been given. I was like, I'd given permission to publish it.
Oh, no.
But I thought, oh no.
But it's so great. It's a fantastic thing. But
Yeah,
it's how
and
you
when
see
I
it.
told my mom, she looked at me and said, "You're taking that. You're taking that, aren't you?" Kind of, because I'd been with Benjamin Zephaniah working on his album
He
Naked,
refused.
and he refused it.
Yeah.
And
Famously refused it. Yeah.
he famously refused it. And there I was, he was a friend of mine. I thought, well, that's him. This is me, right? It's a kind of recognition.
Of course.
Because it said, for services to music.
Absolutely.
Right? And I thought, well, if Her Majesty decided to give me this, and it was the last set of MBEs that she gave before her passing, you know, and it was her birthday honours, right? And so, yeah, I accepted that and took my mother with me to the palace.
God, how proud was she?
And while we were there, I was like interested to find out where the bathroom was, and she went, "It's over there." I'm like, "How do you know?" She goes, "This is not the first time I've been here."
Wow.
And she'd been there in her capacity as the master guide for the Seventh-day Adventist Pathfinder group during the Silver Jubilee celebrations. But she didn't tell, I didn't realise that she'd been there. So when I took her there thinking, I'm taking her there, taking her, she goes, "It's all right, I've been here before." But it was good, it was good.
Amazing. Brilliant. There you go. That's what you can achieve if you work hard at it, and obviously, you know, services to the country as you imagine.
Absolutely.
So can you give a shout out to any young aspiring artists that you may know, or anyone that you know, just the people, just to give a shout out to them, and anyone who you any
There are
positive
loads.
vibe.
There's a group by the name of General Roots. Now, these the lads are, I'm friends of their parents, right? 3 of them. And the drummer and the bass player, Ben and James, their dad is a famous bass player by the name of Ernie McCone.
Okay.
He played with Galliano,
Wow.
The Blockheads. He played with Light of the World, you know, and he's a very famous bass player. And he called me up one day to say, "Look, my sons are playing drums and bass, but they want to make reggae. I know nothing about that, so I'm sending them to you." And he sent them to me, and we forged, you know, some kind of alliance where I would be giving them knowledge of reggae and recording and all that. And then they became the group to be backing Holly Cook. Now, Holly Cook is the young daughter of my friend Paul Cook, with whom I was the rhythm section. He played drums and I played bass, and we toured for many tours with Edwin Collins, because I produced Orange Juice as another one of my outside reggae projects. And Paul was the drummer of that group, the Sex Pistols. And Edwin brought him.
Paul Simmons.
No.
Was it? No.
Paul Cook. Paul Simmons was the Clash.
Yeah, Clash. Sorry, what am I talking about?
So Paul.
Sorry, Paul Simmons. My apologies to you, please.
No, let's go. Don't worry.
He's a lovely guy, man. He's a top guy.
I haven't got Alzheimer's.
No, you're right.
Alzheimer's don't affect me. So it was a privilege to play with Paul Cook, being the drummer of such a formidable outfit, right? And his daughter, Holly, is a formidable singer. Her mom, Jenny, was one of the backing singers for Culture Club.
Oh yeah,
and worked a lot with Boy George. In fact, Boy George is Holly's godfather.
Wow.
And I've written songs with Holly for her first album because her dad said to me, "My daughter's singing reggae. You better look after. I want you to look after her." And I walked into a studio one day in Brighton, where I was supposed to do a collaboration with her, and Winston Francis and George Decker from the Pioneers were in the studio creating this song for Holly, and I walked in and I said, "Have you got the chorus?" They went, "No, we're coming to that." And I went, "Oh, here's the chorus." Blurted out a chorus and left. Wow. And they went, "That's the strongest bit we heard," and started using it. The song's called Real Love, and it's produced by Prince Fatty, who's a young lad of Italian extraction, who's making big waves in the reggae world as a sound engineer, as a disc jockey, as a collaborator with people like Gregory Isaacs, Prince Fatty. So these are the people that I'm looking at as the next generation of reggae. I've also been involved with a group called Dry Bones, and Carol Thompson has been supplying some vocals for Dry Bones, and I've done a whole album with Dry Bones. It's not yet released, and I'm waiting for that to come out. Also, I greatly admire Joss Stone. She came to me via a friend who played drums in my band, a young kid called Richard Stevens, and he was the drummer of my dub band, and in fact, when I first brought him along to say, "This is my drummer," I was told, "He's a white boy." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, white boys are not famed for playing drums in reggae bands." And I'm going, "Well, this one is," right? And he had been given by his father, who was a formidable drummer, a man called John Stevens, who played, he's passed now, but if you research John Stevens, he had a group called Away, and he was a formidable drummer. And when his son told him that he was going to play drums, and he wanted to play reggae, his dad made a tape of what he considered to be the best reggae drumming, and gave it to his son on a cassette to learn these drum beats, right? And one of the songs I discovered was me playing drums.
Wow.
So when he discovered that I was playing drums, he wanted to be in with me. And when I was making The Boy Who Won the Pools music, he had been sent to my studio by Eddie Grant's brother, Alpine, to
Is there anyone you've not worked with, or it's incredible
to play with a band? And I saw this young kid. He was like 16 at the time, and I thought, "Wow, what a great talent as a drummer." And then he told me that his dad had given him this tape, and one of the tunes there was me playing drums, and he wanted to be schooled by me. So I took him in my band, and I needed a person with Musicians Union card. Because in those days you weren't allowed to work on TV unless you were a member of the Musicians Union. And this young kid was a member of the Musicians Union, so he fit the bill. He could play the drums, he was a member of the union, and I was making this music for this TV show, The Boy Who Won the Pools, and I brought him in the band. And if anybody ever sees that show, in the end, when the young singer has conquered everything and become a huge hit, the band are on stage with her, and it's my band, Henry Defoe from Central Line, Richard, and Richard was playing drums. He left my band to join Boy George. Wow. So at a time when he had risen in the Boy George camp to not only drummer but producer of Boy George, he invited me to come and play on the Boy George album, the album called This Is What You Do. And I did that with Boy George, and then another couple of sessions with Omar and George Clinton, sorry, you know. And Richard said to me, Joss Stone would like to meet you. I was like, okay, bring her on. And then she wanted to do some reggae. So I went to the studio and played bass on a tune called Wake Up. And when we'd done cut the track, she turned to me and said, I think I'm going to get Damien on this. I went, what do you mean?
Damien Marley.
Damien Marley. Yeah. Right. She went, yep. Oh. And she went away to America and came back with Damien's voice on the tape where she'd gone and got him to say his bit and brought the tape back for us to mix. I mean, I'm going to work with you. You know, you did that. And so we cut an album, and the album was called Water for Your Soul. And it was proclaimed the best-selling reggae album in 2015
I
by
remember.
Billboard. There was a lot of uproar about that.
Yes, it was.
But I was quick to point out that she had used young British musicians, her being British herself, and the album was authentically reggae. And she's got a great voice. I mean, she's got a voice that a lot of
appropriation. But we don't. So we can go on about this stuff. We can get into stuff. But I'm have to end it on. It's not end it, but come to we're drawing to a close. Okay. It's been fantastic. We've absolutely loved it. But we have to get another interview if we want to talk about any more of this stuff. Okay. But I will say I want to give a big, massive shout out to Luciano.
My brethren.
Absolutely. I went to see him in New York. Oh, God. Through my contacts, Dave Vodney and Cal Freights. I had an incredible experience meeting him.
I've written a song for him. I'm sorry to cut you.
Is it?
I've written a song for Luciano, and I've been trying to get him to sing it for about 2 years.
Luciano, I hope you get to watch this interview.
His manager, Anthony, knows this, right? And we keep not being able to pull up alongside each other, but he's going to be at Reggaeland, and I'm also on the bill.
Brilliant.
So even if I have to bungle him in the back of the van with blindfolds and take him to a studio and go, right, sing, because he knows the tune. It's one of my anthems. It's a song called Fall Babylon. Brilliant. And the chorus goes, Babylon must fall.
Fall Babylon.
Fall Babylon.
That's
yeah.
Right.
And I think Lucci would be the man to sing that.
Brilliant.
Babylon must fall, fall, fall Babylon. Righteous is the writing on the walls. Babylon must fall. Jah know the wicked are gon' feel it and fall, fall, fall Babylon. Warrior are gon' respond to the cause. Babylon must fall. The lines been crossed, the kingdom are gon' get more. Fall. Fall Babylon, come together one and all. Babylon must fall. The I am and a Rasta, fear no man. Earth's rightful ruler, fear no one. He said, I am the I am that I am. I am and a Rasta man. The conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. That I am, yes I am. Bringing peace and love from Africa to every nation. Shalom alaikum. Babylon must fall, fall, fall Babylon. Righteous is the writing on the wall. Babylon must fall. Jah know the wicked are gon' feel it and fall, fall, fall Babylon. Warrior are gon' respond to the cause. Babylon must fall. The lion's been crowned the king, them a go get small. Fall, fall Babylon, come together one and all. Babylon must fall. When Jah created man in the image of his likeness, love was number one. His gift was dominion over all things in the air, sea, and on the land. But because we were deceived by the devil, falling foul to his evil plan, we were banished from the Garden of Eden, and that's when war began. Destined to die, struggling to get by, suffering self-destruction, fighting against each other for senseless, ignorant reasons, disrespected every...
So, Luciano, you've heard it from Dennis Bovell yourself, and I want to give a big shout out to Third World and Freddie McGregor.
All these people I
Freddie
admire.
McGregor, absolute
Cat
legend.
Core has been a friend of mine forever.
Yeah, well, you know, I opened the show for him in America.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I was on the good ship with Freddie McGregor.
Oh,
yeah, man, I
right.
supported Freddie McGregor on the good ship. So, you know, you've got names, and I love it, and we've got a lot to learn. I'm not doing music anymore, but you know what? But the experience I had from reggae music is nothing but blessed. And
further afield, man. Listen,
but blessed.
I'm
Love, positive energy.
assisting with the music of Alpha Blondy from the Ivory Coast. If you check out Alpha Blondy,
I've heard the name.
I've been recording with him since 1983. In fact, on his new album, I've just done a collaboration with him and Capleton.
Oh wow, Capleton.
A song called Cold Fire. Wow. You know.
But that's all for another interview. Seriously, because we could be here all day. And that's the thing. But my brother Dennis, I got to say one thing. This is something I want to put out, and it's very important, because reggae music to me is like, you know, you're the godfather of lovers rock. You know, reggae music is the godfather of love and positive energy and connection and unifying, and just that blessed thing. Rastafarianism is just a thing that just brings people together, regardless of what religion you're into. When you meet Rastafarians, the energy is beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had to kind of bring, and even with everything, you exude it. And
thank you.
Thank God for the blessing today.
Thank
so
you
I want
for
to say
the
one
invitation.
thing. No, I said one thing. So basically, we're in a period right now where you see race is now a conversation. Race, we're talking about race again, okay? Now, could you send out a positive message to the world, my brother, before we leave?
Well, my message to the world is the Almighty did not create a division of the human race. Human is human. We've all got blood in our veins. We've all got brains. We all bleed, as they say, and we can all choose to do the right thing or the wrong thing. Mind you, if you do the wrong thing, you probably end up on the wrong side. So I would suggest everybody in the world do the right thing. I mean, we can only go forward in unity. If we don't unite, then we're taking 3 steps backwards, right? And whoever walks backwards without looking is in danger of becoming harmed. So I would say, let's not go down that road. Make love and not war, because love is lovely, but war can be very ugly.
Thank you so much, man. Couldn't say it better. Poetic, beautiful. Thank you, Dennis Bovell, for coming and being a part of Clusterview.com. We are so exhilarated to be here.
My pleasure.
Thank you.